We're going to learn about user input. User input would allow us to have a user input a value. As it stands now, our program so far, we have hard-coded the value in the program. So we set the duty type cycle to 50%, and we don't change that duty cycle. Now we have done stuff with time, and we change stuff over time, but at no point have we allowed the user to select what they want. This will be our first input that we provide to the Raspberry Pi, and then we make decisions on our program. So let's open up Thony and we'll explore how we use user input. How do we figure that out? So just open a new file here, and let's do Control S, and I'm just going to save it. I'm right here in my projects folder outside of the ATTC 3260, so I'm just saving it in projects. I'm just going to call this input. All right, so input will now be saved, and we can run it in the terminal. So at its very basic level, input is simply just we type the word input, and then we print something that we want to prompt the user. So what is your name? And because it's a string, I have it in quotes. And right here I'm done. So I'll go ahead and save that. And then when I run the script in the terminal, we can see that we're asking what the name is. And I'm going to put my name as Scott. And then I press enter and the program's done. So this allows the user to be able to enter in information into your program. So right now this particular piece of code doesn't really do anything. It collects my name, but I'm not doing anything with the name. And so the first thing that I want to do is create a variable. So I'm going to call this variable username. And I'm going to set its value to what is your name, the input from whatever the person puts in what is your name. All right, and let's then go ahead and print out something so that we know that we are using the username. So let's just say your name is, and then we will concatenate on there username. Okay, we'll go ahead and save that and run the script, and here the user puts in their name, and we print out your name is Scott. And so now what is saved in the variable username is the value that the user types in. So now I can do other things with the username. So let's take away this type of question and let's look at something like this. So give me a number. Okay, and we'll call this user number. And let's give it a question mark, and then we'll put a space in there so it makes it a little easier. Then I'm going to get another line going right here, and let's ask the user for two numbers. So let's ask user number 1 and user number 2 as the variable names, and then say give me another number because we want them to give us two separate numbers. Now what I can do is I can perform any type of calculation on this number, right? I'm asking the user for two different numbers, and in this case maybe I want to sum up those numbers. So I'm going to say user sum equals user number 1, and let's just add those together, plus user number 2. Okay, and then we need to change this to sum, and we need to change this to user sum. So just to go back to clear what we're doing, we ask the user for a number, then we ask them for another number. We store both of those in variables. This variable is then we do something with the variable and we go ahead and print it. One thing I failed to put on here is because this is an integer, we need to cast that to a string in order for it to print. All right, so go ahead and push Control S to save, and let's run this script. So my first number right here, I'm going to put in there a 5. And my second number, let's do a 3, right? We don't want to get too tough with our math. And there's our number. Your sum is 5, 3. So it didn't add those numbers up. It's pulling in those numbers as a string. Okay, so we need to be careful with the way that those numbers are presented to us. So let's come back in here, and we can actually then cast this. Because input is always looking for the string from the user, I can just simply cast these to integers. And cast this one to an integer. And save it. And then we run the code, and we enter in our 5, we enter in our 3, and we've been able to add those up. So the input coming from the user is going to be a string or text. The Python engine doesn't understand that 5 and 3, the numbers that I entered, are integers until I cast it into an integer. All right, so let's go ahead and take a look at how we are going to use this in our program to ask the user information about how they want the light to be displayed. If you haven't already, go ahead and make sure that you have the most recent code by opening up the terminal and navigating to your project and doing a git pull. So I'm all up to date. Now what we're going to open up in Thony is ATTC 3260, Lab 4.0, and then we are right here in Lab 4.1.3. Alright, so Lab 4.1.3 has a lot of similarities to our previous lab. What we're doing different here is we are taking this hard-coded value where we set the red color to 25, and we are now setting the red color based on the user's input. So this number, this line right here has changed. Now, what I'm doing here is I'm saying there is an input, and I'm asking the user what color. And I even give them the designation that I want them to select a number between 0 and 255. We're not going to get complicated and do error checking. We'll just assume the user is going to select this correctly, just so that we can be clear and understand how this input will work. Other than that, there's no other changes to the code. Everything else is matched up. So all we're doing simply here is asking the user for a number, and then just in our previous, as in our previous example, we need to cast that to an integer. That user will be given that, will give that information, and then the code will proceed. Just to be clear, the code will start here at the top, and it will stop when it gets to this, what color value for red. What is the color value for red? It will stop. None of this code below will execute until this value is shown. Okay, so let's go ahead and run this program in the terminal, and let's see how it works. All right, here I am in the terminal, and I will execute the code Lab 4.1.3 .py. So when I press the enter key, I get prompted to enter a value. What is the color value for red? So let's set this first value, and I'm just going to go kind of in the middle. Let's try 128. Okay, so we're seeing now that our duty cycle is at 50, and the off time is at 50, so it's right in the middle. Okay, I'm going to go ahead and I'll press Control-C, and that will end the program. Let's run it one more time, and let's select a different value. Let's try 220. All right, great. So now our duty cycle is 14, and our off time is about 86. All right, let's press Control C and end the program. So now I'm allowing my user to change the value based on an input that they provide me in the terminal.